Hello, I'm Annie Turner, and I'm delighted to welcome Sue Rudd, who is Director, Networks and Service Platforms at Strategy Analytics, to talk about end-to-end networks and service orchestration. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Annie. Good morning or good day.
Okay, so the advent of 5G and cloud has significantly increased the levels of complexity for service providers in their networks. How would you describe the challenges that they're facing?
Well, as you know, we're now deploying 5G on a large scale, but 4G networks and LTE are actually still growing and will continue to expand and improve quite a lot in parallel. So 5G is inherently designed to interwork with 4G. So right there's new complexity of two parallel networks. And then mobile operators are also still running legacy 2G and 3G networks. But more importantly, there's a big change in services coming. We've now got edge services. We've now got hybrid public-private network domains. And soon we're going to have fixed Wi-Fi and wireless access all working together with 5G in release 16, as well as a 5G services architecture that allows multiple vendors to offer different functions within the same mobile core. And then finally, we've now got a lot of hosting at cloud data centers and interoperability with public cloud. So overall, we've got a very complex environment. But services that we're looking at today, whether data, voice, video, whatever, need to operate end to end across all this underlying complexity. So they're operating across multiple legacy networks and current networks. They're operating across multiple domains, as we call them, public and private domains, cloud and carrier domains. And so to make all that work end to end, we really need to look at what's called orchestration, which is like managing the sub-managers of all the other networks and really making the seamless service end to end.
So when we're talking about end-to-end network and service orchestration, could you just elaborate a little bit more on exactly what it is and what it does?
Well, we're really talking about services, in our white paper that's associated with this talk, we describe that in a little more detail with some techie charts. But the next generation networks are really all about services finally. So 5G is going to be about how do you add value, especially new services that meet the needs of business production, supply chains, as well as consumer interactive services. So to deliver these, we really have to look at some overarching mechanism that takes a strategic role to allow them to be enabled from the end user to the network to the other end user to all the devices involved, and then seamlessly put that together to transition across all those domains. And that's what orchestration does. And it's often associated with doing that not just at service launch, but during upgrades and during any kind of network outage. It redirects traffic, and we call that life cycle management. So it has to manage not only the service application level at the top of the stack, but it also has to manage the dynamic allocation of all the underlying resources. So that's the network orchestration part manages the network resources, and the service orchestration part manages the applications end to end.
Okay, thank you. So industry standard organizations such as ETSI and TM Forum have defined frameworks and practices for end-to-end service and network orchestration that are supposed to help service providers address the challenges of complexity. So what do you see as the key roles of end-to-end service and network orchestration?
Well, in this area, there are two very important standards bodies, ETSI-ZSM, which is a special work group that covers zero-touch service management. That's what ZSM optimistically calls itself. And the TM Forum group has a very important group that's been doing good work for a long time called Zoom, nothing to do with the conferencing app, zero-touch orchestration, operations, and management. So TM Forum, Zoom. The two together have defined a set of principles for how to make end-to-end service management happen, and the kind of practices and integration that's required. But But the key areas where we're really looking to do that for 5G are to really interoperate 4G and 5G new radio, to operate the non-standalone, that's the legacy architecture of the 4G network, with the new 5G standalone, and then take that transition. And you can see that that's been a very important part. And 3GPP has defined a set of standards for 5G, which is really the first time. The full interoperability of 5G and 4G is fully specified and testable in the standards. So it's really designed as an interoperable system with end-to-end orchestration. So the good news is it's all well specified from the standards point of view.
Okay. And from your experiences in the market, Sue, are operators now starting to implement such solutions? And I mean, could you give me an example from today?
Well, we've got some tools that came from ETSI's ESM and TM Forum Zoom, and they're finally starting to get implemented. So really, we're still a little bit at the beginning of this, but the tools really are now being able to be done from a single pane of glass, which is incredibly important in the Network Operations Center. With NSA, operators were virtually forced to run separate 4G and 5G operations tools, and it's been very complicated. And what operators are just beginning to discover is the new tools for 5G standalone actually make it much more seamless. Even interoperability with 4G can be done from a single pane of glass. And the kind of tools we're talking about today really allow you to leverage the legacy investments with end-to-end service orchestration and yet get the simplicity of the new 5G SA services. So we're clearly looking to talk to people to get the message out that running multi-domain services is actually gets simpler with 5G standalone.
So please, can you give us an example use case where end-to-end service and network orchestration add real value?
Well, the primary use case that everybody probably is looking to generate revenue from today is managed SD-WAN and the associated security services. The SD-WAN, as you know, has been a very successful service that operators have started to offer as a managed service for enterprise customers. And Orange Business Services provided a very nice summary of some of the key requirements that enterprises are looking for that is very hard for the IT department to do themselves. Things like quality assurance of a virtualized SD-WAN, and to do that across public and private networks, to include in the SD-WAN hybrid access to multi-cloud. That's, you know, if you're using one cloud vendor for your Salesforce and another cloud vendor for your a day-to-day documentation and a different cloud vendor for your customer interactive services. So we're seeing that end users are really starting to look to operators to have options for fully managed or co-managed SD-WAN services, and maybe even a mix of multiple SD-WANs where a company's had an acquisition. So the complexity of SD-WAN networks with segments of SD-WAN from different vendors are definitely becoming a problem that many CIOs are looking for help with. But number one is probably security and privacy. And this turns out to be an area where securing the network off-premise is an important part of the SD-WAN solution. And we've had this thing called SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, that has been implemented, but really needs to be end-to-end as part of the whole SD-WAN services. So service providers are really starting to put together some really world-class solutions for vendor solutions across multiple vendors, multiple SD-WANs. So we're starting to see that the service providers are now actually offering ways, again, to simplify SD-WAN operation. And there have been lots of ways they do this with handling the security, multiple MPLS connectivity, making sure service level agreement parameters are met, automating service verification, finding root causes and correlating them and keeping the SD-WAN going while they're all being diagnosed in parallel. Handling a lot of the CPE and appliance installations, and eventually making those virtual, hopefully in many locations, with UCPE. and really validating and verifying and keeping the whole installation in sync with the inventory and the catalog. A lot of complicated stuff associated with SD-WANs that I don't think there's a CIO in the world that wouldn't love to have this problem simplified. And that's one of the new 5G enabled use cases for end-to-end service orchestration.
Okay, well, thank you. And could you give us maybe, Sue, an example of a use case where end-to-end service and network orchestration add value in future?
One of the really exciting areas, and you've probably heard a lot lately about the telcos and service providers hosting their 5G core services at cloud hyperscaler premises, and offering not only a single cloud hyperscaler for those services, but maybe offering an enterprise a choice or a mix of multiple cloud vendors. And so this leads to what sounds a bit of a mouthful, but end-to-end orchestration for this multi-domain, multi-cloud network is really what's needed. And the CIOs and IT guys just want it all to look seamless. And the way we can do that in 5G networks is with what's called network slicing. And historically, people have actually physically sliced the network to make this work, just like a leased line physically slices up the physical infrastructure. But what 5G brings is dramatic cost savings by virtualizing that slicing so that you truly can scale and ask for a slice for a few minutes, a few hours as needed. And the operators have long seen this as a major opportunity, but been very disappointed. There's been a real lag in network slicing. And the real problem has been management. It's been too hard to do this dynamic management, and not even the tools weren't even specified. And finally, we're starting to see with 5G SA, we've got the management tools that can allow you to manage the 5G services, and actually even to manage the legacy 4G network slices. So we've got some really clever new tools that finally make slice management achievable, manageable, and dynamic at the same time. So you can get the savings of sharing a public network with the security and privacy of having it all to yourself. So there are a lot of different functions that operators are offering as part of these kind of slicing. They can map the service requirements dynamically to an existing template. They can translate a customer's slice requirements. They can even let an enterprise define their own requirements and then request it as a slice when they want to activate it. And that includes things like resource requirements, if there are really special high performance resources required, or if there's special topology and connectivity for networks in different regions or around the world even. And finally, there's going to be able to identify the domains they need to use, cloud, public, all the other, fixed and mobile, and then create what we're calling a federated network slice across all those domains, and then do the monitoring and assurance required to make sure that SLAs are met, and proactively redirect traffic if the SLA looks like it's going to be violated, and then allow the customer, the enterprise, to have a visibility and real-time activation of those services. So a really exciting time for IT people to start to control their own networks while they've got the confidence, the manageability, and the security of a carrier managed network. So in a sense, mobile operators can now offer a telco cloud service, just like the hyperscalers have always offered a data center cloud service, if you like.
What do you see as the critical capabilities of an end-to-end service and network orchestration solution?
So to put this all together and make it simple for the enterprise, the end-to-end network and service orchestration offered by a service provider to an enterprise needs to include things like multi-vendor, multi-domain solutions, end-to-end lifecycle management that's operated transparently behind the scenes, and do it all in a way that allows the service to be delivered based on an underlying model with continuous, what they call continuous fulfillment and closed loop service assurance, so that the customer can have any vendor, any open application running over the network slice in real time, and do it all in a true cloud native microservice-based environment so that it mixes and matches with any of the cloud hyperscaler services that most enterprises are running.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, Sue. So maybe could we just summarize the main takeaways from today?
Sure. As we said at the start, it's a complex world out there, and it's gotten a lot more complex, both from a software and hardware point of view, and a lot of network operations people who are being told they should be more efficient with all the new tools are finding them extremely complex. So what we really need is to be able to put them together into an integrated end-to-end orchestration environment and give them a user front end that makes those tools, enables them to both manually, but importantly, increasingly more automated basis to handle the complexity and the scale of these new networks. And then going forward, by automating the traffic, we can start to get some real savings from the virtualization and the dynamic allocation of resources. So instead of having to have 30% spare capacity for every separate network, the enterprise doesn't have to pay for all that unused capacity. They can rely on the operator to provide dynamic allocation for peak loads. And then that orchestration, if you like, from the operator's point of view, becomes a source of revenue and a differentiator in the marketplace. And I think this is probably the first time we've seen orchestration and management directly contributing to the revenue stream of operators. As we say, orchestration is not just overhead cost anymore. It's actually how services are created, how they run, and how do you make customers happy with an end-to-end service.
Thank you, Sue. If you'd like to know more about this topic, you can download a brand new white paper through the link in the video description below. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.